Welcome to the first episode of our first project in the full-time GoDev. We basically covered already the basics of Go, some concurrency stuff that we covered, the package context and all that stuff, because we're going to use that in our project. And this is going to be the first introduction and project setup of building JSON APIs with Golang. What are we going to build? Well, we are going to build, I was thinking for a very long time, what could be a nice use case? And I think a hotel reservation backend system would be keen to implement. What do you think? It's going to cover a lot of stuff that basically reflect on a lot of other projects. So I think if you master this project, you're going to master a lot of stuff building APIs with Golang. So basically, I already created a simple folder. The folder is hotel reservation. And I also made a README in this thing. And let me open up this README real quick. Right, so we have this README here. And I outlined a little bit of the resources we are going to use. So it's easy for us to find what we need if we are implementing this. And it's also easy for you trying to recreate this project so you can have some kind of a backup system, like a red wire, a red carpet, basically, you can fall back to. And we're going to update this README over and over and over, so we have a good documentation for the people willing to learn. Very important is for the people that purchased Full-Time GoDev already, the program. I made basically an Full-Time GoDev organization on GitHub, and what's going to happen is all the projects will be here, complete projects will be here, and each video, each chapter, each lesson, basically, of the hotel reservation and for the microservices also, is going to be on this organization, on hotel reservation project, and I'm going to tag each video, each each lesson with a specific tag. So maybe we are already at the end and people coming in, so you can basically check out that specific tag and you can follow along as if it was that video. Isn't that amazing? Yes, so that's that, right. So without any further ado, let's do a little bit of a check. So we're going to use MongoDB here. We're going to use MongoDB, so that's a little bit of documentation. We're going to use it later on. We are also going to use GoFiber as our minimal framework, right? Because you could say, yeah, why don't we build this completely from scratch without any help? We could do that, but I think for these backend systems, a little bit of help, a little bit of a fallback, a little bit of a backbone is good, right? Especially because it's a relative large project, right? It's not a simple one or two calls, API calls that we're going to do. It's going to be extensive, so we need to have some tools to make that happen. And there are a lot of frameworks like Gin or Echo. Most of the time I'm using Echo, by the way. But I think GoFiber has a lot of traction, good documentation. It's well known. A lot of companies also using it, so that's why I choose to GoFiber. And for me, it's going to be the first time that I'm using it, basically in depth. But that doesn't matter because all of these frameworks, they basically have the same semantics, right? So it's all going to be amazing. So that's that. Okay, so let's do a little bit of a project outline before we actually set up the project. We're gonna do a little bit of a project outline, and keep in mind this project is going to be how I would build projects for clients, for companies, this is how it's going to be done, right? It's how I do it, and it's going to be good, right? So it's no shenanigans, no bullshit. It's the real deal. So basically, let's do a little bit of a project outline, so we know what we actually need and what we're going to build in big lines, right? From a higher level perspective. So we're going to say project outline. And so what we're going to do, we're going to basically make an hotel reservation backend. So we need users in our system because they are going to basically book a room, right? They're going to book a room inside from an hotel, right? That basically means we're also going to have some admins, right? Because these admins are basically going to check the reservations, right? Reservations or bookings. Maybe bookings, I don't know. We will see how we're going to call this. We need, if you want to book a room from an hotel, so we're going to have some hotels, basically, and that's going to be some CRUD API, right? CRUD API. preferably JSON, of course. We're also going to need rooms, right? Because hotels can have different rooms for different persons. I have no clue. Maybe a loft or something. You know what I mean? With the big jacuzzi. Yeah. So that and a skyline swimming pool or something, right? So we're going to have rooms. It's also going to be some CRUD API, right? And okay, cool. So we have users, admins. So we need to have some authentication, and of course also authorization, right? And we're going to do that with GWT tokens, right? Because we need to authenticate the user, but we also need to authorize this user because we have users and we have admins. So maybe a user can, of course, not check the reservations, right? He can check his reservations, but not everybody's reservations. So we need to find a way to authenticate our users in the system. Hotel rooms, and then of course we're going to have some scripts, right? Some scripts that we're going to set up basically for, I don't know, maybe database management, right? Database management. I'm thinking about management, cannot even type. I'm thinking about, for example, seeding database, maybe, I don't know, migrating or something. I don't know, right? We're going to have some stuff migrating. All right. So migration maybe is better. Migration. So hard to talk, think, and write at the same time. I'm a man. I'm not a woman. Women can do that, but men, we can not. So that's basically a rough estimation of what's going to happen. Of course, there's going to be some more stuff going on, but I think this is good as a fallback for us to see where are we, how far is our project going. So this is the project outline. So without any further ado, let's get some bytes on the screen, right? So basically, what's going on here? My terminal is scuffed, so I'm going to do Vim again here, maybe this, and then terminal. It's perfectly fine. So we are basically in the root of our project, and what I'm always like to do is we start basically very encapsulated and we spread out. We make it more complex as we go. So we're going to do a lot of refactorings here and there, depends on how we like it, right? At the moment, it's like go with the flow, not too many planning, because planning is kind of good, like an outline, but if you're going to strictly plan everything and then you need to refactor, you may be going to come into some troubles, right? So what do we need to have here is, what's going on here with these things? Yeah. We're going to say basically, we're going to make a new file, right? Main.go. And this main.go is basically our entry file. So the first thing that I want to do basically is install. Let's open up the README. I'm going to install, first of all, guys, hey, before we forget, the first thing we need to do is a go mod init. So we're going to do that. We're going to say go mod init, and we're going to call this we're going to say github.com, and it's going to be the fulltimegodev repository, and this is going to be hotel reservation. Yes, that's what's going to be. Let me double read this. Github.com fulltimegodev hotel reservation. So basically, we already talked about Go modules, but in this case, it's going to play nicely if we're going to import stuff, right? So there's a little bit of a convenience way to do things. You could also just go mod init and call it whatever, hotel API or something. But we're going to do it like that, right? Good practices. Boom. So that's fine. That's already been installed. The next thing we're going to do is install Go Fiber. So Go Fiber is this one. So can I basically center this thing? I can't. So what I'm going to do is I have some troubles with my clipboard. So I'm going to do it like a nub here. I'm going to copy this thing. Actually, to be honest, I can do this maybe. No, I can't. God damn it. Right. So go get github.com, Go Fiber version 2, press enter. If you want to read, and we're probably going to check the documentation, we have here this URL we can basically fall back to if we need to do some stuff we don't know, right? That's programming. You cannot know everything. So Fiber is installed. So the first thing we're going to do is test if our routes are basically a little bit of a small shot of dopamine. So we're going to say that app, why not? It's going to be Fiber. I think it's new. Not quite sure. Of course, we need to import this, and VS Code. Vim is not importing it because github.com is going to be Go Fiber, I think. Fiber v2, just like that, and then this going to be work? App declared but not used. That's perfectly fine. And then we are going to basically boot up our server or a JSON API server, and it's going to be app serve. And in serve, by the way, we're going to specify a port as a string, and it's going to be, I don't know, what port do we pick? We have no clue. Let's say 5000. Why not? Service undefined. It's not serve, it's listen. I remember, because I made a small video, I guess, on authorization with Fiber, so I remember that. It's app listen. That's going to be it. And the next thing we could do is basically a go run main.go. So you see Fiber is running. Let me open up here a local host real quick, 5000. Boom. And of course, you could see cannot get / because we don't have any routes, right? We have no routes, we have nothing. But it's working because we get this response already. So that's already good. So let's do something very simple. Let's make a simple route here. We're going to say app get just to see if things are working. And we're going to call this /foo. And now we need to specify a handler, right? And a handler is basically in every single framework the same thing. It's going to take in a context and you're going to return an error. And that's basically almost in every framework the same. And it's basically also what I do if I make something from scratch. I kind of decorate the same function as a handler, right? So basically, let's make this function real quick. For example, func handle foo. Always very good practice to put handle before your name or something, because this is /foo. So we say handle foo. That's very, very convenient to do, and a lot of people will be happy that you do that, your colleagues or something. So we're going to say handle foo. It's going to take in a C, and it's going to be, I think, a pointer to a Fiber CTX. And it's going to return an error, right? And then we have some options. We are basically going to return JSON, I think. Return C JSON, right? And we could do something very simple. Map string, a string. And we're going to say message. And we're going to say working just. Let me delete this readme here. Working just fine. Just like that, right? And then, of course, we're going to say in app get here. We are going to say handle foo. Function pointer, right? Boom. That's that. We're going to close this thing. What's going on here? I cannot even close this. Sometimes this terminal is sometimes killing me. I'm not going to lie. This is so annoying. Guys, look at this. Hiccups here. Alright, it's fine. I'm going to do this. We're going to quit this thing real quick. We're going to open this back up because it's so annoying here. So we're going to say, hey, you see, organic course. So we're going to say go run main.go like this, boom. And then we're going to check this again. We're going to call /foo here, boom. And we're going to have this beautiful, why is this actually so? Look at this. We're going to have a message working just fine. So that basically means that our setup is kind of okay-ish. All right, so the next thing, and why this is so annoying. Look at this. How can I actually quit this? This is super annoying. Look at this. Anyway, hey, we don't care anymore. I'm going to leave it like that. So the next thing I'm going to do is basically make a makefile. It's a very important, I think it's very important. It's just so convenient to basically run our scripts, run our app and all that stuff. So we're going to do that. So we're going to say here percentage Shift 5 actually, to be honest, for a new file in Vim. And VS Code is basically just some clicking stuff. All good, all good. So we're going to say make file, right? We're going to make a make file here, and we're going to say build to build our project. And we're going to build our project. We're going to say go build minus output, and it's going to be in bin. And we're going to call this API, for example, something like that. And we are going to build the main file. So that's already good, I think. The next thing we're going to do is run. And that's basically for running or build it. So we're first going to build it in our bin directory, and then we are going to run it. And we're going to run the executable. And that's going to be /bin API. That should be good enough. Then we're going to make tests, because we're also going to make tests for every single handler. Very, very important. We're going to say go test -v. The whole shebang. And maybe we could do erase, but I don't think it's needed. Something like that. Let me see. This is annoying. I'm gonna quit this once again. Look at this, man. I'm gonna check after this video is done. I'm gonna check how to fix this, right? So basically, what I'm gonna do is make run, for example. Actually, to be honest, make build. So it's building this thing, and what should happen here is if I do an ls all, you could see that we have a bin folder, right? The good stuff is that I also have a git ignore here. .git. It's not opening it because you see we have a bin in the git ignore, so we don't actually upload our binary to GitHub. That would be savage, right? Yes, so we have our make file here. Let me reopen it because if we're gonna run, we don't want to build first and then run. That would be so annoying. So we're gonna say basically build, right? I think that should work. So we're gonna say run, but we're gonna depend on build. So it's first gonna build and then gonna run, right? That should actually work. Let me see. Clear, make run, boom. You see, and it basically built it and it ran. And if I do this, you see it's not working. What's that? So annoying. Annoying. Doesn't matter. Look at this Vim, the power of Vim. It's very easy to reboot. So, yeah, the next thing we're going to do in our make file is basically we're going to append adds for these statements. Because if we do that, then if we do it again, for example, make test, we don't going to see this command being printed out, right? It's basically to muck, to hide the line, the go test line. We don't care about that. We just need the things that are basically the output of the command itself, not that string, right? So that's fine, cool. That's some stuff we already have. So basically, the next thing we're gonna do, let's open up main once again. Right, so a good practice before we start is to be, because this is going to be an API. It's probably in a real world case scenario, you're going to have a front-end team, and your front-end team is going to call your API, and you're in charge of building that API. So what we're going to do basically is we going to version our API. I think it's very important. How can we do that? Well, we can make groups. I don't think, not quite sure how it's called in Fiber, by the way. So we're going to see. I think it's going to be app group. Can we? Yes, we can, right? So let's see what the documentation is here. Group is used for routes with common prefix to define a new subrouter with optional middleware, right? And you can already see this, right? They already make a group of API. And that's exactly what we're going to do. So we're going to say app group, and we're going to say API. And that's going to be, for example, API v1 maybe. And maybe we can actually split this in v1, not quite sure. That could be good. We're going to say API v1 is going to be this thing. And instead of doing /foo, let's handle /foo in this thing. Let's make a new one. We're going to say app get, for example, /user or something. And we're going to say handle user. And we're going to copy this function. I'm going to paste that in. And we're going to say handle user. And then we're going to say user. I don't care. We're going to say, for example, James Foo. All right. What's going on here? And then, of course, right, because we are going to group our user API or user endpoint to the API v1, what we need to do is instead of app, we're going to say API v1. And that is basically going to do that. So let's make run here. Boom, it's going to build and make. So I'm going to open up this thing once again, right? And if you press /foo, right, localhost /foo, then we have MSG working just fine. But if we do, for example, API v1 /user, then we're going to have our user James Foo. Right, and that's a common practice I'm always using, but because it could be that we are going to have multiple versions of our API, and then it's all being set up. The only thing we need to do is make another group, and then we can actually also inherit, copy all the other, the existing endpoints into v2, so they inherit, and then we can change some other stuff because that's basically incompatible or something, right? Cool, that's that. The next thing. We were actually already set. We're already set sailing almost, right? So the next thing we're going to do is basically, I'm thinking. Yes. So what we also want to do is, for example, this route, this port is hard coded, right? We don't want that. So what we're going to do is we're going to say var. Actually, to be honest, we could say the listen adder the listen adder is going to be a flag. It's going to be string, I guess. And we're going to call this listen adder, right? And then we're going to give it a default value. So you can pick your value. Let's say default value 5000. And we're going to give it some information here. It's basically how to use your flag. And we're going to say the listen adder. The listen address of the API server. Boom, just like that. And after that, we're going to say flag parse, because we need to parse the flags. Just like that. Cool. Listen address declared but not used. I know. And then we're going to say, instead of this 5000, we're going to say a listen adder, right? And that's going to give us, yeah, it already did it for me, but most of the people will do this, and then it's going to say cannot use listen adder type of pointer to string as string, because this is going to be a pointer to a string. I have still no clue why they make it a pointer, but we need to deal with that. So we need to dereference this pointer, and this is how you dereference it, right? Sweet. So right now, basically, I can't even... Let's quit this, do it again. So let's basically, we can do a couple things. We could do a make run, and then it's basically going to take the default port. But we also could do, for example, a go build, a make build, by the way. Let's make the build first. We make the build, and then we could say, for example, /bin API dash listen adder. And we're going to give it a port, and we're going to say it's going to be, for example, port 7000 or something, right? If I press enter, you see now the port is running at 7000, right? If you want. Yeah, it is what it is, this Vim thing. I need to fix that. But it is what it is. We need to deal. We need to deal. Look at this welcome message. Hello, Anthony. How are you doing today? I'm feeling amazing. Right, so what can we do next to basically have a very, very smooth stuff? So, of course, I'm always, in my videos, in my streams, I always tell you guys and girls and everything in between that making too much folders is basically not a good approach, right? But sometimes you already know what's going to happen, right? I have in my mind already an overview, and we actually have it right here in README, over what's going to happen. So for APIs, I always, for this API project, I always have my same little routine that I'm doing, my little structure I am doing, right? So, and let's do a couple of these things first. So, the first thing we're going to have is a bunch of handlers, right? It's very important. You could call it routes, maybe controllers or something, but don't do that, right? Please call it handlers, right? Handlers, it's in the Go community, people will thank you because everybody knows in the Go community what is a handler. And if you have a folder of handlers, they will exactly know what is going on, right? So what we're going to do is basically we're going to make a new folder, and we're going to call this handlers. Actually, to be honest, we're going to call this API. We're going to call this API, and in this API, we're going to have handlers, and you will see what I mean by that. It's going to be, how do we call that? Postfix with handler, right? So let's call a directory API, and inside of this API, we're going to make a new file. And of course, we're going to have multiple routes. So let's do an example, and let's start with, for example, the user routes. So everything what's involving users going to be in that file. So we are going to say user handler.go. It could be users handler, but I like to have it just singular, how do you say it? Not plural, but singular, just a user, right? Boom, like a resource, like an entity, like a domain, right? This is going to be package API, right? Of course, what you could do is also, for example, make a package API, and inside API, you're going to have a folder v1 and v2 and all that stuff, but that's already a little bit too much, and we don't want that stuff. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to make a function, and we're going to call this, for example, be aware that we are in a different package, so we need to basically make our functions, variables, whatever, structures, types, we need to make them public, right? We need to make them accessible, so we need to uppercase the first letter. So we're going to say something simple, handle get user, and that's going to be a C, a pointer to a fiber, CTX, right? And an error. And I hope it's going to import this. Yes, it's doing it, and it needs to be v2 here, guys. Always take care. We need to make a v2 here, and we are basically gonna return CJSON. And for the sake of course, it's not valid JSON. I know we're gonna return James, right? It doesn't really matter. Just to show you guys how we're gonna structure this and how it's gonna work. So we have a handle get users, and later on we're basically going to have a nice structure, a user handler basically, and that user handler will hold the database and all that stuff. You're gonna see we're gonna work with interfaces and all that stuff, so it's going to be very testable and very extendable, and we can implement whatever we want, like a real programmer, right? So we have this thing. We're gonna back to main, and instead of, for example, here handle user, we're gonna delete this thing, and we're going to say that /user get /user is going to be API handle get user. Boom, just like that, right? And if we run our program, we're gonna say make a run. Boom. We're gonna open up this thingy. We're gonna press enter, and it's going to start James. Of course, this is a bad formatted JSON thingy, but hey, apparently it's valid. Apparently it's kind of valid. The JSON marshaller didn't complain. Fine by me. So this is James, right? Of course, for the people that don't know, but get foo. Let's delete foo, by the way. We don't need foo anymore. He's distracting me, right? So get user is basically is getting all the users, right? In an API, in a current API, get /user is basically a list user. So a couple things we could do. We could call it handle get users or handle list users. So I'm gonna call this handle get users, and we're going to back to the API, and we're gonna change that up. Get users. Maybe we're gonna change it to list users. I don't know. Actually, to be honest, let's do list. Handle list users or get users. It doesn't matter. Let's keep it simple, and let's take it like that, right? So that's this. The next thing we're gonna do is make another route. For example, we could do get user, and we could say, for example, /ID, right? And of course, this is going to return a single user resource, and that's going to be handle get user, right? And maybe we could do by ID or something, right? But I'm going to say handle get user is pretty fine. Of course, we're going to get an error that handle get user is not declared by package API. That's no worries, because we are going to do that. And we're going to say user handler. We're going to copy this function, paste it below, and we're going to say handle get user, right? Something like that. And now if we open up main once again, everything is perfectly fine. Okay, the next thing. So of course, we're going to get users. We're going to get a user by ID. So we also need to have types, right? We need to have a type, right? So how are we going to organize that? We could make these types here in main, but that's going to be a problem, because then we cannot use them in our API folder, right? Here in our API project here, API folder, API module, then we cannot use it. We could also just say we're going to put them into API, but it's weird. So what I'm always doing is make a new folder, and you could call this folder models, you could call this folder types, resources, whatever. I like to call it types, because I don't really like the concept, although it works very well. Model view controller, it worked when I started programming, and it was the only thing that actually existed, and it worked perfectly fine. And to be honest, hey, it's fine, but I don't want to call them models, and I don't want to call controllers, because I want you to think a little bit differently than in that MVC concept, right? We need to think a little bit more functional, a little bit more composable, instead of this paradigm that's existing for years, right? It's not that it's bad, but it's going to eye flap you, and I want you to think broad. Because if you're gonna work for a company and you're gonna make a simple API, they ask you to make a simple API, and you're going to call everything a model view controller, they're gonna look a little bit weird. They're gonna think you're a beginner, and we don't want that, right? So we're gonna make a new folder, and that's going to be the types folder, right? Types like this, and then we're gonna make a new file. Of course, we could make a single file with types. That's most likely how I start off. I make in my types folder, I make a types.go file, and in that file I write everything. But because I already know that in user and in hotel and in booking and reservation and admin and whatever, what rooms and all that stuff we're going to make, I know we're going to put some logic in. So I think it's better to already start just naming, splitting out our resources or entities or domains. So we're going to say enter file name. That's going to be user.go. It does not need to be not user model, just user, boom, and we are good, right? So inside of this thing, it's going to call us a package main because it's the Vim plugin and it's a little bit stupid. It does not know that we are in another folder. We're going to call this package types, right? And we're going to delete this whole shebang here. Whoop, boom. And we're going to make a type user as a structure, and this user is going to have an ID. Of course, we need to be careful because if you make this ID private, not a big of an idea. I don't really believe in the concept of private and public variables, but that's my opinion. It's basically, it's 2023, nobody uses this anymore. So we're going to say ID is going to be public, and you could also make ID like that, but again, a good idiom, it's personal, but I like to have these small things uppercased. Hey, you could, from me, you can do what you want. I do it like that. You could do it like you want. But a lot of people in coding in general are using these ID like that instead of ID like this, right? So ID, and that's going to be a string because we are going to work with MongoDB, and that's going to be in the next video. We're going to set up our MongoDB with Docker and all that stuff, and yeah, all that good stuff. So we're going to say ID string. That's going to be, we need to specify some text. What's going on? Yeah, fine. My PC is doing weird stuff. So we're going to say JSON ID bson. Just like the JSON tag, I did not actually explain this, but you're going to see what I mean by that. So we're going to say bson, that's going to be underscore ID. So what this does, a very important thing. These are called Go tags. I think I covered them in the struct lesson briefly. But basically what it means is like, this is going to be ID uppercase, right? But for example, maybe we want to JSON marshal this user in the browser. And if we don't specify this, then it's basically going to marshal this. It could be some marshal or just JSON, and bson is a little bit of the same. It's going to marshal it with uppercase ID. So you're going to have, for example, you're going to have something like user, a name, for example. You're going to have this ID, and then, for example, in our case, it's a string, is going to be ID, my ID, right? But we don't want that, right? Because maybe JavaScript expects it in lowercase or something. So these JSON strings, these JSON tags, they will basically convert your ID here, this name, to this. So for the MongoDB, it's going to map this ID to underscore ID in MongoDB. And then we could have something like a JSON. And that's going to be, for example, ID, right? So what's going to happen is that for bson, for MongoDB, it's going to have underscore map to underscore ID. For JSON, it's going to map to ID. Probably made a mistake here, not quite sure, but it is what it is. We will see when the time comes. So we're going to have a user, and for example, we're going to have a first name, right? First name is going to be a string. And let's copy this thing, paste it in, and then we're going to paste it here, and that's going to be, how would we want this first name to be represented in our database? Maybe we want it like this, first name, right? Like, how do you call it? A camel case, and ID is going to be the same thing, first name, right? If you like to have this snake case, you could do it like that, right? So then it's going to be snake case in our database, but let's keep things consistent and use camel case, right? So first name, we're going to have a last name, for example, last name, the same thing. We're going to do last name here and a last name here. Boom, just like that. So we have our type user here, that's fine. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to back to API, user handler, by the way. And we're going to say that, for example, let's try to render a single user here. So we're going to say var, actually we could do it like this, user, or u is going to be types dot user, right? Just like that. And then we're going to say the first name, Of course, it does not know it. Let's just save this. Boom. And now it basically imported this github.com fulltimegodev hotel reservation types. That's basically the path. And we are going to say now that it's imported, we're going to have access to the first name. And we're going to say, for example, it's going to be, let's make James, by the way. James. And our last name is going to be, I don't know, at the water cooler. Water cooler. Boom. James at the water cooler. And then instead of returning James here, we can actually basically do this. Boom. We're going to return JSON is basically the context is going to return JSON. It will automatically marshal your user on the screen, right? Let's see if this all works. Of course, this is not so annoying, guys. Let's quit this event back again in this thing. Yeah, I need to do is make run. This will not happen anymore in the next video. So if we basically press enter, I think this is going to be, yeah, you see what's going to happen. It basically returns us this ID is empty. And we could do a nice little trick for that. The first name is James. And do you see that this first name is camel cased instead of Pascal cased, right? And that's because our JSON tag, right? And the last name is at the water cooler. So that's good. What we could do here basically is in types user, we could do something like, if you don't want your value to be presented in JSON, because maybe we have a private variable or a public variable, but we don't want it in JSON, right? It's a public variable for our code, for our logic, but we don't want the users to see that in the API. Then we can actually do something like omit empty or something. And what you also could do to basically omit it in the API, omit empty will basically omit this ID if it's empty, right? But you could also do JSON underscore, just like this. What's going on here? Just like this. And then it's basically going to omit the field anytime. So it will never be JSON marshaled, even though it's public, right? So we're going to say ID and omit empty. Omit empty. Just like that. Of course, I'm stuck once again here for some reason. I don't know what's going on. Maybe I have no clue. It's so weird, guys. It's annoying. But it is what it is. Right, so we're going to make run once again. Boom. And then we are going to check our thingy here. Press enter. And then you're going to see that ID is completely disappeared. Of course, we're going to need the ID. But that's for our MongoDB stuff in the next video. So I hope this is clear. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to commit this to GitHub, right? And I'm going to tag it with, for example, I'm not quite sure what the tag name is going to be. Maybe I'm going to say it episode 1 or something, right? So you guys can check that out if you're coming into the program a little bit later. So this is basically our project setup. We have our API folder where we can put our handlers in. We have our types. We have our makefile, everything is set up. We have our fiber. So the next episode is going to be all around MongoDB. Set that up, and maybe we're going to see the database already and all that stuff. So dopamine incoming. See you in the next lesson.